catch you up with where we left off, the telepaths have forced a standoff because Lita got laid. It was written all over her O-face that the Vorlons had created the telepaths, prompting Byron to commit his people to forcing the Alliance to give them their own homeworld through blackmail. Now that this has led to the predictable outcome of a standoff, some of Byron's people have gone off to fight. We get all this from Lockley as she's getting up for work, reflecting on the bad choice of coming here. Then again, the telepaths are threatening a hunger strike, which I have to say is a hell of a way to spin we're almost out of food. You gotta hand it to Byron on that one. Lockley lays out the whole situation in a log entry, and then does the only thing that she can think to do, call Bester. Set a teep to catch a teep. After the titles, we see how the efforts to cut their way in are being thwarted. Ooh, I'm not touching you. They're convincing the guy with a torch that there is a bomb on the other side, and if he means the telepath plotline, then yes, he is correct. This has been the problem. They keep messing with the heads of whoever starts cutting, and by the time the door is penetrated, there's inches of plating on the other side stopping them. You know, I can't help but think what would really undermine this combined telepathic force and wielding of heavy plates would probably be a hunger strike. Lockley gets close to the door and seems to pick up something, so she asks if there's any other way inside. There's the old maintenance shafts, but they won't support the kind of force needed to deal with these people, but it would let Lockley go through alone, which she intends to do. I hope you realize what this means. You're going to be putting yourself in mortal peril, Lockley.
Stop, don't.
It seems that talking to Lockley is their plan, as Lita asks if the message got through. But they're going to have to wait. We return to Centauri Prime, where Londo's confused by the reports that he's getting. Military production should be down, but instead it's up. G'Kar's hopeful that it's for a civil war.
Once you finish killing each other, we can plow under all the buildings and plant rows of flowers that spell out the words, "Too annoying to live," in letters big enough to be seen from space.
Sounds like you've devoted a great deal of your time to this dream of yours, G'Kar. Good for you. He's eating fresh spoo, which disgusts Londo because you need to age it. Centauri can't eat fresh spoo, which makes G'Kar naturally wonder why it was going through the palace. There's only one reasonable explanation, of course. It must have been a present for him and it went to the wrong door. Actually, at G'Kar's prompting, Londo realizes, that direction would lead to our underground cells. Londo has become an Ood. Well, who should be in this cell? Not just a Narn, but Natoth, G'Kar's aide from back in the day. She was presumed dead during the attacks on the Narn homeworld, so she's not up on current events. He gives her the good news. The Narn is free again. And the even better news, fresh spoo! Obviously she survived, was one of the Narn brought here for service and entertainment, but that wasn't satisfactory. She can't even juggle more than 3 pins at a time. G'Kar is outraged by this and demands to know why she's here. Londo naturally doesn't know, but he can guess what likely happened. Cartagia, who, as we all know, was highly fixated on the little things, or at least cutting people into little things, ordered her down here for some reason or other, and then simply forgot. That's a rather gutting thing to hear, but Londo explains this is what happens when you have an absolute authority who must never be questioned. He shares about how he saw a guard once, standing in the middle of no place, guarding nothing, all day long. He asked about it, and no one had any idea why. Turns out that 200 years earlier, a girl who saw the first flower after winter didn't want it to be stepped on, so she told a guard to stand watch over it. And no one ever told the guard to stop. So generation after generation, after the reason to stand there had been rendered meaningless, still the order was being carried out, because that's what happens with absolute power. It leads you to turn whims into permanent action. And that's why this is a problem. Even though Cartagia is dead and nobody misses him, still the order that she be in here must stand. Only the Regent can countermand it. And you might not have noticed, but his brain's off standing in a field right now also.
One way or another, we will leave here with Natoth. Oh, by Shakuan, I swear. I'll see this palace in flames, and I'll see you burn with it.
Okay, calm down. Have some spoo. Back on B5, Lockley's heading off into the shaft, and Garibaldi finds that incredibly amusing. He points out this whole thing is silly. They've effectively imprisoned themselves, so there's no need to worry about them. But the ones that slipped out, they're going to be the problem. There's no telling what they might do, not to mention they could theoretically be operating on Byron's behalf, undermining things by commands that he's sending or disturbances in the Force or however it works. What makes this day worse is that the Drazi security found Berkiri metal floating in space near where one of the attacks happened. Doesn't sound like the Berkiri, but the Drazi are convinced, and they're going to bring it up. Gotta say, Sheridan is really getting up to his eyeballs right now. His telepath idea blew up in their faces. They don't know who's been preying on shipping lanes. The accusations are going to be flying like monsters do on Maple Street. And he doesn't even know Bester's on his way yet. This is the day that keeps on giving, ain't it? Lockley makes it through and gets escorted to Byron and Lita, where she explains the key to comedy is timing. Everybody is pissed off about these attacks and doesn't know who is to blame for it. But you can be sure of one thing. They definitely would like to see someone get an ass kicking right now. And the Telepaths, they've polished up their butts, stuck them out, and volunteered. Getting a homeworld now? Nah, it's not going to happen. Nobody's in the mood to give them a planet, except maybe to pitch them into Jupiter. She says their best chance is to come out now rather than being removed by force, because eventually that is how this will end. And with force, people can get hurt, you know. SWAT doesn't stand for special weapons and tickling. Speaking of exits, G'Kar says there's a Narn ship that can rendezvous with Londos on his way back to Babylon 5. They just need to find a way to get Natoth on that ship somehow, and it'll be good.
And we have to do it without killing a guard, without raising any alarms, and without anyone noticing that she is gone. For my next trick, I shall fly around the room under my own power.
I think Cartagia used to do that, holding his arms out and making airplane noises. One of the female staff arrives to inform on the status of the ship, and naturally, Londo has a good look at her from every angle and asks to remove her clothes. Speaking of expecting to get screwed, the closed council session. The Drazi shares the pieces of debris with the others in Sheridan's office, and says not only does this show that the Berkiri were involved, but it's likely they knew where to attack thanks to the information about the shipping lines and the security measures stolen by the Telepaths. They announce that they are going to retaliate for each ship lost, except Delenn says there's something the Drazi should hear before they go leaping into anything. The Gain have some debris too.
And was that debris of Berkiri origin?
No, it was made by Drazi.
Oh, that's not going to go over too well after the J'accuse. Sheridan points out the obvious. Clearly, whoever is behind this is planting this evidence to lay suspicion elsewhere. The fact that the edges are too smooth to have been blown off is pretty convincing. Delenn asks that the Alliance give them more time to try to get to the bottom of this, to figure out who is actually responsible for all this before they go attacking one another in a misguided effort to get justice.
Any ship that crosses Drazi space without proper authorization will not survive the mistake.
I guess his mind is made up then. On Centauri Prime, Londo orders the guard to no longer visit this cell, to let Natoth waste away alone and then seal up the wing. That is just about the most ominous sounding thing possible, only exceeded by...
Captain.
Bester?
So good to see you again.
Natoth is given the dress, complete with a veil, and told the plan. Be indiscreet. Yes, indiscreet. Everyone has been trained not to look at indiscretions, so as long as Londo looks like he's drunk and ready to go down, everybody will look away. I mean, if I thought of Londo having sex, I'd certainly want to look away too. Meanwhile, before I was indifferent, but this graffiti has convinced me of the justness of the cause. Seems this guy is the leader of this little band, and when they hear that Bester and the Bloodhounds are back, he decides to follow up this success with violence. Meanwhile, Bester deals with a guy convinced there's a bomb over there by essentially using his brain as sort of a Trojan horse. So when they try to push in, he pushes back to give them a poke in the mind's eye. Only he doesn't know the ones outside have taken a guard to get the combination and his handprint to access the weapons. and they've arrived to show Bester how much they're one big happy family.
My people are in there, and several others just tried to kill me. But then, what family doesn't have its difficulties?
Gotta admit, that's a real glasses 1/64th full way of looking at it, Bester. As for the issue among the Alliance worlds, Sheridan and Delenn have an announcement to make. What has two thumbs and watches the Watchers? Boom, this guy! Yes, if any ship opens fire, the White Stars will engage them. They have the authority to handle border disputes, so the only way out is to leave the Alliance, which they all need. So Sheridan and Delenn insist with a bit more time, they can find out who's really responsible, because it's very unlikely that it's anybody in this room. The Drazi ambassador makes clear that while they're going to listen here, they're not going to forget that Sheridan threatened them with force. I guess the downside of making a point stick is that the point sticks. Elsewhere, G'Kar and Londo see Natoth off. She's off now that her arc has some closure. And on the station, the Bloodhound units have arrived, so Bester can really get to work. Yes, try to contain your joy. Wrapping up Natoth's storyline is the high point of the episode, carried further because it involves the Londo-G'Kar dynamic. This is the highlight of Season 5 so far. Now that the war is behind them, they have this wonderful relationship between two potent actors. And it's made all the better when that dynamic is shredded at the sight of Natoth in a cell, only to then say that she can't be freed. It's funny that the most entertaining part of the episode for me is not the human drama, but the aliens and their relationship. The rest, though, that's all set up for next week's episode, Phoenix Rising, so we'll hold off on that for now. The end of the Telepath plot is in sight. Thank God.
All hail the Overlord! All hail the Overlord! Well, with everyone now on the same side, perhaps you're planning to invade yourselves for a change. I find the idea curiously appealing.